Well, hello everybody. Good Thursday morning. Leo, what's happening, man? Glad hope your week's starting off to a good day, good start. Monday morning, for me, I had a long 5-day weekend, 4-day weekend, 4-day. A little fishing with my son on Friday and spent all day with my wife, just her and I on a date day on Saturday, which was really nice. And yesterday was church and counseling, so it was a good weekend. Good weekend. Looking forward to see what the week brings ahead of us. So I'm going to continue today with part 2 of chapter 2, Reparenting, from my book, Healing the Wounded Child Within. And we're talking about reparenting the inner child, which we all have. And I'll start by saying that when my therapist several years ago set me down and started talking about this inner child stuff, I thought she'd lost her lid. Hey, what's up, Tiger? I thought she'd lost her lid, and inner child, what are you talking about? That's some kind of guru stuff, and it doesn't exist. Well, it does exist. In fact, there's a clinical and forensic psychologist, there's Dr. Stephen Diamond. He absolutely says that the inner child is real, and if you're doubting it, look into his work. But I can tell you firsthand that it is real. I've experienced it. I've talked to it. And it's definitely living inside each and every one of us. And it's what I want to say. It's not physically living inside of us. It's figuratively and metaphorically real. When you start doing the work, you'll figure it out and you'll understand it. So, hey, LaDon. So it's something that takes a little getting used to. You got to be open-minded. It's best to do it with somebody that's been there before. And there's certain things you can do to really get in touch with that little inner child within us. That inner child at its very best, it contributes to our creativity and spontaneity and our joy and delight in the little things in life. Kathy's little inner child, she's got a different one than mine. Kathy's, she loves life. She's joyous, she's free, she's happy all the time. And that's that. She's got a little kid that just was never really harmed. Hey, Daniel, how you doing? And so her inner child is just one that's a pleasure to be around. The mind's getting that way. And then you look at the worst that a wounded child, it fears the world. And it wants when it wants it. And it will act out in the worst ways they're confronted with frightening experiences or strong emotions. So the inner child that we're talking about, especially for survivors, has never really been taught how to live life. Probably on week 4, I have a really good diagram of chapter 2. I got a really good diagram that I'm thinking about showing you guys, if I can figure out how to do it, that will explain a lot of this to you. But we hold on to these emotions and this fear, and what happens to us is God gives us this innate ability to survive. And we step in, even though we might be 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, 9 years old, 10 years old, we step in to protect that inner child. And that it isn't always in the best way to do it, but it's the only way we know how to survive. I always tell survivors or people that we work with that maybe aren't survivors of sexual abuse, but none of us escape life without adverse childhood experiences, which is the same thing as unresolved trauma, just put in a little softer way. That all of us have an inner child that needs to be protected. And when God gives us that innate ability to do it, we do it. We step in it in whatever way we can. At the worst, a wounded child fears the world. Like I say, it wants what it wants. And it'll throw a fit. I mean, I think about myself being in business, and here I am in my 30s, 40s, 50s in business. And as long as everything was going my way, everything was cool. But because as a young adult, because as a teen, because as a child, I was never taught that, sometimes life throws curveballs at us, and we don't always get the things we want. Things don't always go the way we want them to go. Things happen in life that are beyond our control, and it's nothing to do with us. Because I wasn't taught that, because what I was taught was to throw a fit and and manipulate people to get what I wanted, intimidate people to get what I wanted. As an adult, when things went south, that little kid would come out of me and I would start throwing a fit, throwing a temper tantrum, intimidating and manipulating people to get the things that I wanted out of them. So I had to learn how to be an adult as an adult. There was something that's really, really weird. I know a few of the people that I'm working with right now, they feel the same thing. It's like, I feel like this little kid's living inside of me, but yet I'm a 30, 40, 50, 60-year-old man, but yet I got this little kid. Hey, Kathy, how you doing? I got this little kid inside of me that just doesn't know how to act. So I want you to think of the everyday conscious process of living your everyday life as being similar to driving a car, right? So our everyday life is just like driving a car. It's no big deal. When we go to drive a car, we walk out to the car, we get in it, we turn it on, put the seatbelt on, we take off, and we're down the road. We know where we're going. And a lot of times, if you're like me, you might be going to point A and you end up going to point B because your memory just takes you there automatically without thinking. But it's no big deal to drive a car, You know how to drive. But the problem is, for those of us with wounded inner children, our life can go from just fine to out of control like in a blink of an eye. I mean, just as you could be talking to a person 1 second, and you might say something that you've said to this person countless times before. You might have gestured to this person some way countless times before you'd done it. But for some reason, the tone of your voice might have shifted a little bit. Your gesture, the look on your face might have shifted a little bit. And for some reason, something that you talked about 1,000 times before with this person, and you guys are having a great conversation, all of a sudden, just like it says, you're fine 1 minute, and just in the blink of an eye, that person's out of control. And you're scratching your head going, what is going on? Thanks, Winger. What's going on? Well, it's something from the past. You trigger something from the past. And people in recovery, we talk about triggers all the time. And when I talk about recovery, people, please, drug and alcohol is an important part of it, but that's sobriety. Recovery is the underlying issues. We're recovering the person that God intended us to be. Liquor and alcohol and drugs is a symptom. It's not the problem. It's just a symptom. So when I'm talking about recovery, I'm talking about drugs and alcohol, but I'm also talking about codependence. Like Tracy, I'm talking about anger. I'm talking about jealousy. I'm talking about self-confidence. There's depression. Control. There's a ton of things that recovery is surrounded by, and that's why I'm going to figure out how to do this chart for you on the week 4, because it really will explain it in deep detail. So when we're in recovery, all right, we're trying to figure out why we went that way. And we talk about triggers all the time. And a lot of time we talk about triggers for drugs and alcohol. Well, it's drugs and alcohol, find those triggers, but also what's your emotional triggers. And in my book, there's a story about me and Kathy one day where I snapped, and it had nothing to do with Kathy. It was just she said something that reminded me of my mother that Kathy had told me countless times before. And in a blink of an eye, I was a raging maniac. I went out of control. It's because I was triggered by something Kathy said. So we need to discover as we journey on this journey of recovery, and that's some of the work that I do when I coach people and counsel people. We get to those triggers that are triggering you, so we can figure out why you're acting the way you are, and then help you work through those triggers when they rise up. But here's the thing about the triggers is that they're really subtle. And you think you got them licked, and all of a sudden it comes in from a different direction, and you're in trouble again. So it's a constant reminder and a constant refreshing of we can never become complacent in our recovery on that way. Think if someone cuts us off on a freeway, or if a partner says something that we take wrong, which happens all the time. We may go from being able to handle our emotions to being out of control far more quickly than unwounded people. So what a person that hasn't been wounded as a child, a teenager, even as an adult, what they can deal with on a normal basis people that have been wounded, especially the sexual abuse survivors. Because remember, sexual abuse automatically includes emotional and spiritual abuse. Physical abuse automatically covers emotional and spiritual abuse. Emotional and spiritual abuse kind of speak for the same, and they're really bad because words are piercing. The Bible talks about our tongue being like a two-edged sword. So we got to be really careful with our words, because our words will wound people more than being hit will. So we'll flip really fast because we feel like a person might be attacking us, when the reality is that person that we feel is attacking us, it's got their own problems, and what they're talking about oftentimes, and 99% of the time, has nothing to do with us, but yet we take it personal because all of our life is wounded people, we've been on our guards. You think of an actual child that's throwing the worst tantrum you've ever seen. We've all seen them. We've seen kids in the stores, in the markets, at the park, at the baseball game, screaming and kicking. All right, now you see that kid. Now let's throw them your credit cards, your phone, and your keys to your car. Okay? Let's give them all those. So when you lose your tenuous grip on your emotional state, so when we lose that grip on our emotional state, when we go from 0 to 100 miles an hour, the adult self becomes the passenger. We're no longer in control. The inner child self takes the wheel. So just imagine that. Now we give this kid throwing a tantrum, we give him the keys to our car, we give him our cell phone, and we give him the credit cards. And now we're sitting in the back seat and we have no control over what's going on. God only knows what's going to happen when that little kid takes off like that, because there's no stopping them. It's almost like they're in a blackout. It's like a blackout rage. And some people, when they get in that blackout rage, can become very physical. For me, when I was in a blackout rage, it was very verbal. I would attack people. So that's kind of what it's like when an inner child is wounded. And a lot of people don't understand that. They just look at the guy and go, what's wrong with that guy? He's crazy, man. I mean, geez, I was just talking to him. And all I did was say A, B, or C to him, and he just went off the handle. I mean, like, I don't understand it. Well, no, you won't understand it. And the reality is that unless that person is working on their own recovery, they don't understand it either. It just happens. And a lot of times what they will say is this: "This is just who I am. If you don't like it, too bad. Get over it." And that's not right. It's not who they are. It's who their wounded child is. So being aware of that, if somebody's snapping all the time, don't take it personal. It's not about you. Get to know the person. I mean, it's hard to get to know a stranger, but if they're friends of yours, find out what the heck's going on with them. Really get to know them. Find out why they're so upset. What's bothering them. And if you can't do that, then suggest. Don't ever tell anybody what they have to do, because you don't know what anybody has to do. Ask them if you can help them to find somebody to help them. Okay, to get the help, they need to figure this out, because believe me, hey Bob, I didn't like living the way I was living. I hated it. But it's all I knew, because I had done it all my life. Because it worked for so many years. It kept me safe. It kept me protected. I built a great business being that way. But it only works until it quits working. And then all of a sudden, God just kind of whispers in your ear and says, hey, it's time. Your get out of jail free cards are used up, and you need to get some help for this situation, or things are going to get really bad really quick. So just be aware of that, and don't check your men, especially men. Check your egos at the door, man. Society has ruined us. Don't show your emotions. Don't show your feelings. Don't cry. Suck it up. Be a man. Figure it out on your own. Well, no wonder there's so many wounded men walking around, because they're carrying all this guilt and the shame because they don't feel they match up to the world as a man. Yeah, there's a place to do that, and there's also a place to be able to let your emotions and feelings go. I always say this: only a weak man hides his weaknesses. Did you hear that? It takes a weak man to hide his weaknesses, but it takes a truly strong and courageous man to talk about those weaknesses. Okay? Again, in the right context. You can't sit in a board meeting and start talking about your feelings. I understand that. But you're not going to heal if you don't start talking about the emotions and feelings that you've been holding on for years and years and years and years. Okay, saying, well, it's just part of growing up. It's just part of life. No, whoever's telling you that has told you the wrong way about growing up and about life. Okay. I ask yourself, have you ever noticed that small rational voice in the back of your mind, right? That you can hear even when you're in the middle of a fit of rage with someone, right? You and your spouse or your girlfriend are going, or having a conversation, and it's just, it's getting heated. In the back of your head, you're saying, don't do it, but you just keep going at it. Same thing with the boss. Don't go in there and talk to your boss right now. He's in a pissed off mood, and all you're going to do is cause problems if you go in and talk to him, right? And so you let that little child take over, and you walk into that meeting or you walk in that conversation with your wife, and all sorts of stuff comes out of your mouth that as an adult you would never say. As an adult, you don't mean, okay? But you can't stop yourself from saying them. It's because that little inner child is out of control. He's hurting. He wants to be heard. That's the biggest thing, is that inner child wants to be heard. He wants to be seen. Don't you hear me? Don't you hear what I'm trying to tell you? Most of us have lost our voices figuratively, or we've lost them by people shutting us up or telling us, who do you think you are? You can't talk this way. So we lose our voices to the point to where we don't really say what we feel. And so we get in an argument with a boss, we get in an argument with our spouse, right? And when we do that, we start calmly. But then the boss contradicts, or the wife contradicts what you're trying to say. They appear not to see your point. And so you take your voice up another notch, right? And you keep doing that because every time you do that, it pushes them farther away. And you feel like they're not listening, so you go up another notch until you are finally yelling and screaming. Because all you want to do is be heard. And all we're doing when we do that, all that little inner child is doing when we do that, is pushing the people away from us. And they're going to shut down on us. They're not going to listen to us. They don't want to hear us. Where we can sit and talk in the adult voice, or we can say, hey, look at little Randy, you need to chill right now. Why don't you go for a walk before you go talk to these people? Okay, and just pray a little bit so that you can walk into this business meeting. You can talk to your wife in a loving, kind way. You guys can sit down and have a great communication about what's really going on with you. So she can see your point, you can see her point, you guys can come to a common agreement. But if we're in that fit of rage, if the inner child is just like, he's hurting and he's mad, or she's mad, it's going to accomplish nothing. Okay, and remember that inner child's not trying to ruin your marriage or get you fired. That's the last thing, right? It's just that frightened little boy or girl inside of you is handling the overwhelming emotions the only way a child can. It's the only way he's been taught how to handle those emotions, is by throwing a fit. We don't, the children don't have an internal sensor that regulates the expressions of their emotions. Okay, so it's like we're not taught by our parents how to deal with adverse situations. And it's nothing against parents, because you got to understand that parental guidance is a learned behavior handed down from generation to generation to generation that started way back in your ancestral lineage somewhere. And so your parents only did to you what was done to them, and was probably a little better to you than it was to them. So they're only doing what they knew. They don't know how to communicate to you in certain ways. I'm not saying all parents, okay? Please understand that. But who taught you how to communicate? I really want you to to really communicate with somebody. And communication isn't about talking and trying to be the one that knows everything. The main point of communication is listening. But that inner child doesn't want to listen because nobody's ever listened to him. So why should he listen to you? See the war that's going on? So we have to learn how to communicate. Whoever taught you how to be a good father, a good mother, whoever showed you how to be a good husband or a good wife. The marriages that Kathy and I deal with all the time, they didn't have the role models. So they learned on their own. There are these The inner child in them is the only thing that's here. We're adults, but we got this inner child running our life. Unless things are going perfectly okay. It's also helpful to keep in mind that the adult, that you, the adult. Okay, so me, the adult, you, the adult, we're doing great. Okay, we're logical, we're strong, and we're resourceful. We've accumulated a lifetime of wisdom and know-how, and that's the truth. We have all that stuff. But until we can understand this inner child concept, right? Having all that is great, but how do we teach that inner child to chill out, right? How do we teach that little inner child, say, hey, look, dude, you're okay, man. We got this covered. We got this covered. It works until it doesn't work no more. And you'll know when it doesn't work when people are pulling away from you, when you seem to constantly be battling with your wife or your children, or constantly battling with your employee or employees. Something's not right when that's happening. You're trying to be heard and you're not heard. So we have to learn how to love that inner child. It takes a while to do it. And I might talk about some little trinkets that you can do, little things you can do to really get in touch with that little inner child in my next session. Okay. The problem that you may have is that little saboteur, the inner child. He's always keeping us from applying the skills to our life. So we have the wisdom, we have the courage, we have the knowledge, we have everything, we have the resources. We know that our behaviors are wrong, but that little saboteur, man, he knows how to get to us, and he goes at it, and so he'll do anything he can when he's not getting his way to try to get his way. Now the good news is, and this is the good news, but it's also the very hard news, is that by addressing the root issues, okay, what are the root issues? What are the causes of this inner child? Why is he acting the way he is? Why did he do what he's doing? Which is the hard part of recovery. You'll be able to get back into the driver's seat and work with your inner child instead of fighting him for control. So the good news is you can get back in control of your inner child. Okay, he's in there. He's not going to go nowhere. And through your recovery, you learn to love yourself. You learn the tools like don't take things personally. There's a whole gamut of things that you're going to learn along the way. And then you can protect that inner child when you'll feel him coming up. Sometimes you don't, but most of the time you can feel him. You just say, whoa, look at little dude. We're good. We're loved. We're around people that love us all the time. Okay, we're not being abused right now. These people are just, they don't know that you're hurt inside, number one. And number one, what's going on within their lives? You know, why are they so upset? Why are they so hurt? Why are they having to insert their power over you? Okay, so that's part of the retraining of the mind. So I know it sounds nuts to talk about an inner child. It did to me, and you know, sometimes people look at me like I'm whacked out of my mind. But most of the people that, just like I do with my therapist, you've gone over the top now, this inner child stuff. But when I've had them do their exercises, it's a writing exercise. They're blown away what comes out, and I'll explain that to you next week, I think. But it's a really good exercise. You can also find it in my 7-day challenge book. That's 7 days of different things to do to heal. Okay. Even the most rational, well-adjusted, emotional, healthy people have one. Okay. But for most people, the extent of their inner child's control over their lives is the occasional, and this is true, let's go get ice cream in the middle of the night. They can handle their emotions fine. They can handle everything, but every once in a while, it's like, God, I just got to have that ice cream, even though I can't. And so they might make an ice cream run in the middle of the night. And with that, my suggestion would be this, is that go down and have ice cream with your inner child. Take a time out of your day when things are going wrong and just go get some ice cream. Or if you're not into ice cream, get some fruit and go down to the park and just sit with him and feed the ducks and just be with that inner child and have fun with yourself. Love yourself. Love that little kid. The thing about the inner child of survivors of sexual abuse is that they tend to be deeply wounded, and often they're very angry, and that's very true. It's not it's a deep wound. I had a meditation one time. This came to me. It says, Randy, the scars are deeper than you can ever imagine, and the damage is incomprehensible. The scars are deeper than you can ever imagine. The damage is incomprehensible. The scars of sexual abuse are extremely deep. Like I say, because sexual abuse at a minimum is sexual, emotional, and spiritual abuse, and oftentimes includes physical abuse. So there's a lot of damage that's been done to our inner psyche. It doesn't mean we can't revive it. We can. I'm a perfect example of it. A lot of you listening right now, except for Miss Powers, she knew me when I was not the man I am today. She knew me when I was that other person. But a lot of you didn't know me back then. And you wouldn't want to have been around me. So give your inner child a break. Give yourself a break. There's a lot of books on this stuff. And I want to tell you that in order for all this, in order for recovery period, guys, the third step in any kind of recovery program is we turn our will and our life over to the care of God. And I've got to tell you that without God in your life, your chances of recovery are pretty much zero. Okay? Because there's a lot of stuff that's got to come up. And I also understand that a lot of people have a problem with God. I've had this said to me, and I've actually read articles on this, that you want me to believe in this God up in the sky that I can't see, this God that's supposedly going to take care of me and meet all my needs and love me unconditionally and always be there for me. But yet I had a father right here on earth that's supposed to do the same thing that was never here for me. So how do you really expect me to believe in a God in heaven? It's legitimate. I've heard it from a lot of people. And all I can tell you is that I was that person one time. And all I can tell you is when I got on my knees and gave my life to God, the first thing that went was the obsession to drink and use was lifted that morning. It was gone. But all the work I had to do on the past 38 years of a wounded child, all he did for me there was he walked with me. And every day he gave me the courage, the wisdom, and the strength to walk through that, because it's not easy. This is not an easy journey in any way. So next week, I'm going to give you guys some examples of the types of behaviors that abused children exhibit at the various stages of life, depending on when their inner child was wounded. So there's some specific things that you can pick up on where people got wounded inner children. And I'll bring that to you next week. And hopefully I'll remember to give you guys one very simple exercise. I'm going to do it to right now. I'll forget about it next week. Here's what I want you to do. If you got time, go somewhere by yourself, go in your study, go in a park, go anywhere by yourself, and just relax and pray a little bit. And then I want you to take a pencil and paper, right? And I want you to sit down by yourself. You can't have anybody here. This is just you, God, and your journal. Don't edit, don't erase, don't change. What I want you to do is that you and your inner child are going to have a dialogue. And here's how you can do it. You can start it very easily. You say, hey, hello, my name's Randy. What's your name? Right? It's non-dominant handwriting. So you're going to ask the questions of your inner child with your dominant hand. Okay? And then I want you to just sit very quietly. Don't be in a rush. Don't be in a hurry. Then take the pencil and put it in your non-dominant hand. Don't worry about what it looks like, because you won't be able to read it probably. All right? And then just let him answer the questions that you ask him. Be real gentle with him. Be real gentle on yourself. I know it sounds wacky, but I'm telling you, ask whatever question you want of that little inner child with your right hand. Give the pencil to your left hand. That's your inner child. Or vice versa, whatever your dominant and non-dominant hands are. And let him answer you. I promise you're going to be surprised about what you find out about yourself and that inner child. And so I'd really like you guys to do that. And next week, maybe I'll ask if anybody did it. And if somebody wants to tell me how it was for them, I'd really appreciate it. Okay. So be sure to visit the Courageous Healers Foundation website at courageoushealers.org. And then for information on my life coaching practice, visit my coaching website, changeyourlifestorynow.com. Kathy and I are doing counseling for couples. It's been an absolutely wonderful journey over the last year. We are seeing absolutely amazing things happen. I will say, but because of the glory of God, we've had a couple people that were ready for divorce, and after our first session, they walked out saying, "I don't want a divorce. We're going to work on this." So that's all because of God, not because Kathy. He just works through us. So we really enjoy working with people. It's our calling. And then I also work one-on-one with addicts and survivors, and whatever your issue might be. It could be anywhere from abuse to business to a gamut of different things. I've got a whole life full of knowledge in my head, so that God's given me to do this. So to get my book, Healing the Wounded Child Within, you can get it on Amazon. It's available on paperback, Kindle, and also it's available on Audible. So you can get it on Audible right now if you're one that likes to listen to books. And then you can also pick up a copy of my 30-day devotional to wholeness. It's available on Amazon too. And that devotional, what a lot of our couples were doing is they would read it together at night before they went to bed, because at the end of every devotion, there's 3 contemplative questions. And they would sit there together, read it, and then together they would answer those questions. They'd answer them individually, but then they would come together. And it was a great way to dialogue with each other about what was going on and how that the devotion related to them. So pick that up on Amazon as well. So remember, but guys, if nobody tells you they love you today, Randy does, but more importantly, God does. Have a blessed week, and I'll see you next Monday about 11 o'clock at the same time. All right? Love you. Be blessed.